actually have two questions. The first one came up actually today after the meditation. With the Kriyas, is it possible to get hurt yourself really much? Because sometimes it feels like my spine is going...
Doing unbelievable things, yeah.
No.
Okay.
And the other one, today also, it feels like I lost completely myself. Like the life before, everything, my job, my relationships, everything feels like strange, like a stranger.
No mountain, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now the question is, should I just wait and pretend like everything is like it was? Or should I search for solitude? I mean, not completely for sure gonna go on working because my job is important. But yeah, it's a big question which comes up now, what to do, or just wait.
Mm-hmm. So there seems to be two quite independent inquiries, right? The first with regard to whether it's safe for the body when body is in a state of trance. In other words, even that state of trance kind of like body, in other words, is moving because it is moved by a functioning of a different department of the nervous system. It no longer functions from where we have that completely taken for granted, coordinated, right? Functioning, which comes from, well, we grew up with that, we equip with that. It's our second nature. If the nose is itching, we don't think twice, right? It's performed like kind of very, very, whatever. It's like every movement, it doesn't even feel as anything goes into that, except maybe when you're doing something more specific. You're practicing something, you're practicing calligraphy, dance, archery, right? Where the movement is, okay, I'm gonna do this movement, right? Precise movement. You know how the first thing is when they learn violin is to place the, what is it called in English? Smычок, huh? Bow with, but the part on the bow with all the strings. Thank you. To press the fret on the strings, so it actually as flat as possible. So then it's like, and they say some people have that great touch immediately and others take a long time because they like, all these are consciously done movements. In what we call Kriyas, they are involuntarily. And how many times I made that distinction in videos that we continuously publish, in conversations over years, because we have that term Kriya, but that term already has certain connotations because of Kriya Yoga, right? Sudarshan Kriya Yoga, Kundalini Yoga of Yogi Bhajan. They also call this Kriyas that they practice. And the distinction, we don't practice them. So it's a very big distinction. It's completely and utterly involuntarily. So the body at that time goes into a state where that what is responsible for all this functioning is switched off actually. And now what otherwise is not employed begins to function. And that is not something which is like, it's also, we could say, belongs to that highly orchestrated, very subtle way of how the nervous system working. So therefore, these movements that the body performs in the state when prana is awakened, and there is this process, it seems to us, because there is still some residue, we're not completely switched off, because sometimes we are, and then we may not even recollect what we were doing. That portion of that rational mind still, oh my God, what am I, and I've been there myself, and of course I've seen it in others, and I worked with people, and I've seen unbelievable feats of gymnastics performed. Like, I was quite stretched, quite flexible. I did hatha yoga, I was even, this and that in the 90s. Flexible in a certain way, but not necessarily in other ways. I did a lot of, I was able to do, lying on, what's this asana? Someone helped me, lying down on the floor with your chin, right? In a locust, I think. And then you flip both, and you kind of, not quite touching the head with my feet, no, but still arching the body, which was like a, quite a fit of, but this was nothing in comparison to when the spontaneous yoga asanas unleashed. And the one particular one which frightened me, it was in the lotus, my body started to arch back, and it felt as if I'm going to see my own coccyx. The body went in such an unbelievable, I thought, is my spine going to take that? Of course that, so it was this question rose. And of course, as soon as these questions rise, then the Kriyas kind of weaken, and they may even subside slightly before you go back to that. But soon I've realized, and there was very strong sense of intuition. So this is why I want you to hear me and take what is relevant to you so that you understand, because I don't want you to end up with do's and don'ts, and I don't want you or us to apply one size fits all. In principle, when this is an authentic, completely driven by that awakened pranic force process, then body cannot hurt itself, except when there are external circumstances, hard surfaces, walls, radiators, sharp corners. So therefore, this is something else. It's not that the body is hurting itself. It's a kind of more on the level of the accident. So this, obviously, if you do this at home, you need to make sure, if you go into particularly deep, then your body won't begin to move. You need to have some open space to move around. And the second thing to be aware of is that driving that some of us have, you see? And this particularly to those who might also have certain greater knowledge of the way the body moves in asanas. Let's say you are a yoga instructor and you taught yoga, for example, and you know how the body can move and this and that asana, and suddenly it happens. And so you kind of like catch yourself, oh wow. So, and then there is a possibility that there is a not 100% spontaneity of the process, but it's like, oh, let me hold it longer. Just as example with the holding of the breath given often. Do you remember when I spoke about holding of the breath? Do you? So it's like someone hears that, in fact, I knew people like that, who were, well, Kumbhaka came, I keep holding it. And this is dangerous, right? Because it can only be when they are completely, a complete state of purity when it comes to nadis. Especially some of the nadis that are really, really purified towards the advanced stage of this process. Therefore, this kind of pranayamas cannot be performed voluntarily. Pranayamas maybe, Kapalabhati maybe, but we live in a pollution, mental pollution more dangerous for Kapalabhati than even in environmental. Mental pollution, like you cannot do Kapalabhati breathing in the city because you will enter your pranic field, you will expose your light body because there's immediately, this is what pranayama is. You versed a little bit and you belong to that community, right? So you know this, so all this cautious, right? So all these sheaths, layers. And you know that after the body made of food, Anamaya Kosha, comes Pranamaya, and then the Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and let alone Anandamaya. So Pranamaya second doesn't mean it's grosser than the Manomaya and Vijnanamaya. What it is because it acts as intermediary. It's what connects that what is physical structure made out of tissues, dhatus, with the subtle body. So that it's seamlessly fused through the electric force of prana. So we're kind of making it into a detour, but this will, if you make this connection, you will have greater clarity and therefore greater confidence in the process itself. So often I had to bring this reminder, never force anything to do with pranayama even when it's spontaneous. Always check if it's spontaneous or something enters like I'm going to drive this process now. Like there's a tendency, I'm going to hijack it, right? It's okay, I'm already holding it 3 minutes easily, spontaneously, right? So why don't I extend it for another minute? We don't want to do that. It's dangerous. Breath may arrest and subside completely. Then we shouldn't be afraid. You see? Another story. Oh my God, I'm not breathing, I need to breathe. And the panic comes in. No, if it's holding on its own, it's magnificent. Conditions are ripe. See? So there is at that very moment, a tremendous amount of territory is covered. But forcing it, trying to forgo it, is not desirable. Same here with kriyas that are expressed as bodily postures, movements of all kinds. So if someone is versed already in that whole physiology of the process, and they may think, oh yeah, I can, for sure I can hold it longer. There are many different kind of yoga methodologies. West particularly tapered with yoga to come up with their own kind of, there's yoga where you're supposed to stay for a very long time, what it's called, but like you're supposed to hold posture for many, many, many minutes, and only then the benefit begin to, and they state that long is the physical benefit, that long is the, and what have you. But we don't want to do that. If you are completely authentically running on the spontaneity of the process, I almost guarantee you nothing that the body would do would cause itself harm, because it is protected by that very nature of the process. You see? But it might do things that would feel challenging, because some of these postures were, I would even say, painful. Painful in a sense that because of unusual nature, let alone after coming out of meditation session, it feel like a real workout, like a serious workout. So that part of the question, right? If you, as I will now turn to the second, just feel free to see if something needs to be tweaked there, okay? Clarified. Now, with regard to like you felt what you felt, right? And everything kind of, this. Analogies can be made plenty of how sometimes we kind of, when we're watching a movie for a while, let's say in nice kind of environment, it's very real, it's very kind of visceral, and if it's well made, it's supposed to take us completely. It's supposed to draw us in, well, to the degree where everything just becomes secondary. We forget about everything else. We forget about, you are in a movie, in the character. I love that. I love that what the movie provides. I'm not interested in being in a movie and being aware that I'm aware and I'm clever clock and I can see it through. And only good movie. When the movie is bad, like, no, that's sorry, that doesn't work. Next. So this, and then you kind of want a break, or you finish the series, the film or something. You get up, and this moment when you get up from the movie, from the screen, and you move, and kind of like it's just like has that experience that held you so strongly now begins to fade. It's similar to the dreaming as well. When you sleep and there's a very vivid dreams, completely as real, if not more. Sometimes some people say, wow, this dream was more real than this reality. You come out of that dream and it still has that transitory phase. It's like, on one hand, if it was very pleasant dream, maybe it will be accompanied by sense of pity of being interrupted. If it was a horror nightmare, it will be relief. Like, oh my gosh, like, thank God that's a dream. So this analogy is often made, and often awakening is spoken of, right, by many public speakers, teachers, that when they try to speak to the larger audiences, sort of as to kind of secure the meaning of the term awakening, it's like that, you had a strong, very, very visceral experiences in a dream, and you woke up from that dream. And upon waking up, you realize that that was just a dream, no matter how much you were under the impression of that dream. So that's how awakening is. Awakening is characterized by that very, very feeling. Everything felt real, circumstances, everything. You see? So, first of all, since it only happened as far as I understood, well, this afternoon, right, today, I wouldn't even worry about it because there's no time passed enough for kind of to begin to have any concerns that this is going to be something that will color you on the long run. You see, in the long run. If it's a prolonged phase, and if it's begin to get accompanied by this, no mountain. There's nobody, like nothing is important. But it's a kind of a reset button as well. It can be also seen as that reset, like literally a complete renewal. And that is something else. This has, I would say, a profound value in that. Because the more conscious we are, the more the awareness there is, the less there is experience of sameness. I want to bring immediate analogy here to what we spoke earlier. I think it will be helpful even if it's not immediately seen how it's connected. When we spoke about creativity, and I said, it doesn't matter what each and every one of us think of ourselves, we all are actually supremely creative beings. Likewise, here it is applicable in a sense that doesn't matter how it feels that, okay, well, this sameness, everydayness of life, and I don't feel much novelty in that because of the circumstances. In both cases, it's because there's not enough consciousness. There is not enough light. There's not enough awareness. And the reason for that is, of course, simply rooted in something in the system which clogs that. So the windows of perception, or the doors of perception, whatever, are not bright, not opened enough, not cleansed enough, not cleaned enough. And whenever that happens, then light is there, but it's dimmed. So as soon as you feel less creative, it's like a test. You want to run a test? You want to know how you feel? There are people take blood tests, right? Pressure, the blood, heart, whatever, the tests, running the tests to know how we're doing, because we may not have enough intuition to guide us, to tell us. So we want this reaffirmation. This is a psychological test to know how much conscious you are, any one of us. If you feel you're not creative, stale, you feel like everything is the same, there's this mundaneness, stress setting into the body. There's a stress in the nervous system. Nothing changed in your environment, absolutely nothing. But there is more consciousness, and nothing feels the same. Everything is lit by internal light, and you can't put your finger on. And you're not in Bali. Well, maybe Bali is not the best example. Someone does like mosquitoes, humidity. You're not in Mauritius in a 5-star hotel resort where 5 guys walking after you for all your wishes, food carrying, fanning you with things, doing the foot massage, like ready for any sort of like just 5-star plus bonus, everything from the bar, drink to oblivion, eat to till you pop, And like, of course, there's great novelty because it feels very different from the life in Freiburg. I don't know where you live, but I just thought to mention that city. Whereas it is also true, and it is our experience, confirmed again and again, that when there is greater liveliness, when we feel vibrant, then that what felt just now, sameness, staleness, felt lacking in novelty, recedes, and it's as if something else comes from the same environment, but we perceive more. What it is that we are able to evaluate. I will now speak with appreciation of the words of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who opened our eyes to understand that, is that what characterizes refinement of perception, that celestial perception, that God consciousness, is ability to perceive the finest and extract the finest in the environment, irrespective of what this environment made of at the surface level of affairs. So we can even give extreme examples, and of course sometimes people in California like to corner you, and they like to jump into Auschwitz, and they like to go into like, what about... This is big theme, of course, but it is true, it is experienced. It's experienced by myself very vividly. The area where I grew up and everything is like nothing to write home about. And yet when I was undergoing through this process and when I was walking there, everything was lit by unbelievably, incredibly unusual light, and everything felt very, very familiar, but completely anew. So this was a confirmation that there is something else going on. This was yoga, direct. This is a confirmation. This is yoga. This is confirmation of what we already know. So I wouldn't worry too much about how it feels, because maybe this is an experience of that reset. You see, when everything that you have strong connection with strong relation with, right, suddenly felt as if it receded, right? It doesn't mean that what all this exemplifies is not important. But what it means is that something else opened up in you, temporarily fell on the background. Job, responsibilities, as you know, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but you said it, right? And it's too new to draw any conclusions now. So I welcome you to simply see this for what it is, enjoy it, because it may be something that opens up beautiful vistas, you know. It brings very often incredible insights because we have a very different perspective. More, dare I say, elevated perspective. Perspective that comes from seeing it not at the face value of what it is, but having that often direct insight, like tapping into, like becoming almost, I don't want to use this term like, I don't want to misdirect you or anyone. It's not like we're becoming, what is it, people who foretell the future? Yeah, like, it's not like we become, there's another psychic and there's another term. Fortune tellers, yeah. It's not like we kind of become fortune tellers, It's not like there's a great song by Robert Plant and what's her name? Yeah, gosh. It's called Fortune Teller. It's really bluesy, very south, It's really, really beautiful. With what's her name? Gosh, they did an album together around 2006, and then they're a couple now. Robert Plant of the Led Zeppelin, and she's a Alison, yes, Alison Krauss. Well done. She's a great, great blues singer, and they did a couple of albums, and there's this track, Fortune Teller, So it's like he went to the fortune teller, right? And she like, of course, it's like, you are in love, she tells him, So basically, he ended up being with a fortune teller. And so his fortune is being told for free now. So I would never advise anyone to begin to draw conclusions, How am I going to do the job now, the work, right? Like, am I going to lose interest? Yes, you might not. You might. You might just lose complete interest in anything you've been doing, in everything you've been doing. So the reset button might be more than a reset. It might be an upgrade. A reset is one, but an upgrade is like one operating system outlived itself. Something else is being reinstalled now. And in that reinstallation, and I don't want to go there because I still don't know how software differs from hardware. Whatever where at this, right? Whatever where, it doesn't wear itself anymore. So it needs to be upgraded. So this process of upgrading itself brings about this reevaluation of what we've been doing, jobs, interests in life, purpose. And that happens, some people don't want that and run back. If they run back to, no, I don't want that. I don't want anything challenged in my life. If there is no supportive environment in particular, it feels really like. But if you are in a supportive environment and if this process is unstoppable, then you cannot do anything about it other than going with the flow. So I prefer when it's that, when it's that kind of no option. So at least it's not given to the tango, because then it will still be later on brought to that reevaluation. because this is the way of consciousness, the way of growing. So, does that make sense to you? Okay, good.